Did you all know that one dude stood up to kings all by himself and changed the fate of a nation, armed only with his faith? In a barren, dusty region, under the scorching heat of the Gilead sun, emerged a figure destined to be among the prophetic luminaries of human history, echoing through to our days. That was Elijah the Tishbite, whose renowned journey didn't need written records to eternalize his legend. His existence resonated deeper than the triumphs of countless rulers in the distant 9th century BC. Elijah shone like a beacon of authenticity, confronting monarchs and igniting spirituality in a territory overshadowed by disbelief. His celestial mission was undeniable, foretold in Malachi 4:5. "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." This announcement reverberated within those awaiting the reappearance of this celestial voice. The aura of mystery surrounding his appearance only magnified his enigmatic figure. Despite the scriptures mentioning his origins in Gilead, details about his lineage or his origins remain shrouded in secrecy, further fueling fascination for this prophet. If y'all are captivated by this dive into biblical teachings, I invite you to join us with a click on the sign up button and to activate alerts so you don't miss any of our upcoming explorations. Elijah stood out not only for his eloquence, his resilience was remarkable. The scriptures in 1 Kings 17:1 narrate his bold challenge to Ahab, foretelling a long period of drought by his words. His feat of outrunning Ahab's chariot from Mount Carmel to Jezreel attests to his exceptional vitality. His journey was punctuated by grand deeds and divine interventions. After facing Ahab, he was guided by God to the brook Chariot, where he was miraculously sustained by ravens. When the brook dried up, he followed divine guidance to Zarephath in Sidon, where he was welcomed by a widow, fulfilling the prophecy of Luke 4:26. In Zarephath, Elijah revealed divine power, ensuring uninterrupted food in a miraculous way. A parable found in Luke 17:8-10 speaks to humility and the role of the servant, reflecting the journey of Elijah, who, despite being a prophet of great stature, always remained a loyal servant to the Lord. Elijah's saga takes us on a journey of faith and wonders, from the arid valleys of Gilead to the far reaches of Arabia and Galilee, leaving us with timeless teachings about obedience and trust in the Creator. During his journey, Elijah had a memorable encounter in a small village. 10 men afflicted with leprosy, marginalized and hopeless, pleaded for compassion from Jesus, begging for healing. Jesus, upon meeting them, instructed them to present themselves to the priests, an act of faith that resulted in their purification. Among the healed, a Samaritan, recognizing the miracle, returned praising God and expressing gratitude to Jesus, highlighting the breadth of divine mercy. Upon arriving in Zarephath, Elijah encountered a widow struggling with poverty. The last reserves of flour and oil were nearly depleted. However, Elijah brought a glimmer of hope. He first requested a loaf of bread and assured that the provisions would last until the rains returned. This prophecy tested the widow's faith, placing her face to face with trust in the divine. However, the widow's son fell gravely ill, leading the woman to confront Elijah, a reflection of human anguish in the face of adversity. Moved by compassion and faith in the supreme power, Elijah interceded for the young man, taking him to his chamber and calling upon the heavens. This account invites us to reflect on the magnitude of faith and the strength of the human spirit when aligned with the divine will, weaving a narrative that not only illustrates the power of belief, but also our ability to face and overcome the most daunting challenges, guided by the light of hope and the unconditional love that emanates from the heart of the universe. Throughout the day, the clamor of the prophets of Baal echoed without response, a silence that weighed like lead on the hearts of those present. evidencing the ineffectiveness of their pleas. Meanwhile, Elijah watched with serenity, waiting for the opportune moment to intervene. As evening approached, he drew the people's attention, guiding them in rebuilding the altar of the Lord, which had been destroyed. With 12 stones representing the tribes of Israel, Elijah rebuilt the altar in the name of the Lord, digging a trench around it, and prepared the burnt offering. After arranging the wood and the bull, he ordered that 4 large jars of water be filled and poured over the altar, repeating the act 3 times until the water overflowed, filling the trench. This act was not just a demonstration of faith, but a direct challenge to established beliefs, an assertion that even in the most improbable conditions, the power of the true God would manifest itself. The audience watched, holding their breath, as Elijah raised his prayer to the heavens, asking God to reveal his greatness and make the people recognize that he was the Lord. What followed was a spectacle of unwavering faith. Fire descended from the heavens, consuming the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, and even the water in the trench, leaving all spectators in absolute awe. The miracle not only consumed the sacrifice, but also incinerated doubts and indecision among the people. The crowd, witnesses to that supernatural demonstration, prostrated themselves in unison, exclaiming, "The Lord is God! The Lord is God!" This moment of collective epiphany marked a turnaround in national consciousness, a return to ancestral faith. Elijah, seizing the momentum of the divine revelation, ordered the prophets of Baal to be captured and taken to the brook Kishon, where they were executed, an act that, though drastic, aimed to eradicate the corrupting influence of idolatry in Israel. With the symbolic purification of the people, Elijah ascended to the top of Carmel, kneeling in deep prayer, pleading for rain. His servant, sent to observe the sea, returned 6 times with no news. On the 7th time, he announced the sight of a small cloud, a precursor to the end of the long drought. Soon the sky darkened with clouds, the wind blew strong, and abundant rain began to fall upon the parched land, symbolizing renewal and hope for Israel. This episode transcends historical narrative, offering us a lesson about the resilience of faith in the face of adversity. The story of Elijah and the confrontation on Mount Carmel teaches us about the importance of conscious choice, the courage to face our own fears, and the strength found in true faith. Above all, it reveals that even in the moments of greatest despair, when the odds seem insurmountable, genuine faith has the power to transform realities, leading us back to the path of light and truth. Narrating the journey of Elijah is therefore more than just recounting events from a distant past. It is an invitation for us to reflect on our own spiritual journey, recognizing that in every challenge faced with faith, there lies an opportunity to witness the unfathomable power of the divine in our lives. It is a story that resonates with each of us, encouraging us to seek our own connection with the sacred, in order to find strength, hope, and renewal, no matter how arid the lands we traverse on our journey. Faced with Elijah's sincere outpouring, God instructed him to stand at the entrance of the cave. What followed was a series of powerful manifestations, a great and strong wind that tore through the mountains, an earthquake, and after that, a fire. However, in each of these phenomena, Elijah realized that the Lord was not present. It was after the fire that came a gentle and soft whisper, and it was in this subtle calmness that Elijah found God. This moment teaches a profound lesson about divine perception, not always in thunderous encounters, but often in tranquility and gentleness, God reveals himself. The dialogue between Elijah and God did not end with majestic manifestations. God questioned Elijah again. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The prophet's response reflected his sense of isolation, of being the last to remain faithful amidst a nation that had turned away from God. But in response, God entrusted him with future tasks, instructing him to anoint Hazael as king of Syria, Jehu as king of Israel, and Elisha as his prophetic successor. These instructions not only reaffirmed the divine plan in action, but also reminded Elijah that he was not alone. There were others who also remained faithful. Elijah's journey to Mount Horeb was not only a fleeing from persecution, but a pilgrimage in search of spiritual renewal and direction. In the silence of this sacred mountain, God not only restored Elijah's strength, but also redefined the course of his mission, expanding his vision beyond immediate desolation. The encounter with God at Horeb reassured Elijah that, despite appearances, the divine cause was not lost. Upon leaving the cave, Elijah found Elisha, son of Shaphat, plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. By casting his mantle upon Elisha, Elijah symbolically chose him as his successor. Elisha, understanding the significance of this gesture, left his oxen and followed Elijah, becoming his servant. This moment of transition not only symbolized the continuity of prophetic work, but also highlighted the importance of mentoring and the passing of knowledge and responsibility from one generation to another. The narrative of Elijah is rich in dramatic events and lessons of faith, but it also speaks to moments of vulnerability and hopelessness, reminding us that greatness is not found in the absence of flaws or fears, but in the ability to persevere despite them. The story of this prophet highlights the human journey in its purest essence, a trajectory of highs and lows, of confrontation and divine encounters, which shape character and define purpose. Reflecting on the life of Elijah, we are invited to recognize our own deserts and mountains, our escapes and our encounters. We are inspired to seek God not only in grand manifestations, but also in the quiet whispers of daily life, finding strength and purpose even in the most challenging moments. It is a story that resonates through the ages, offering hope, guidance, and the promise that even in storms, we are not walking alone. Elijah, immersed in deep crisis, did not hide his distress and loneliness from God. This transparency reveals the authenticity of his faith and how critical the situation was in Israel. In an unexpected way, God manifested his presence not through spectacles of nature, but through a gentle and comforting whisper. This gesture, subtle yet impactful, served as a reminder that God is present in both the grandeur and the simplicity of life. Listening to this serene voice, Elijah covered his face in deep respect and emerged from his refuge. Questioned again by the divine voice, he reaffirmed his devotion. God then entrusted him with new missions, outlining a future for both him and Israel. The divine directives indicated to Elijah a path back to the desert of Damascus, where he should appoint Hazael as the monarch of Syria, Jehu as the leader of Israel, and Elisha as his spiritual successor. These acts not only ensured the continuity of Elijah's mission, but also evidenced God's uninterrupted attention to Israel. Elijah realized that, despite the bleak scenario, there were 7,000 individuals in Israel who remained loyal to God, reigniting his hope and emphasizing that his struggle was not solitary. On Mount Horeb, Elijah was transformed, gaining not only specific guidance, but also the promise that his mission would continue beyond his existence. With a new perspective, he set out to fulfill his divine tasks, encountering Elisha, who promptly recognized the seriousness of the moment by accepting Elijah's mantle. This gesture symbolized not only the passing of the prophetic baton, but also the beginning of a new chapter in Israel's spiritual history. Before following Elijah, Elisha made sure to bid farewell to his family, in an act that reflected gratitude and the acknowledgement of a new journey beginning. Sacrificing the oxen with which he worked, he shared a meal with his community, sealing his commitment to his new calling. The journey of Elijah and Elisha reveals a significant transition marked by respect, dedication, and unwavering commitment to God. Meanwhile, Elisha, following the course of his mission, heads to Damascus for a meeting destined to alter the fate of nations. The dialogue with Hazael, the future king of Syria, was laden with ominous foreshadowing about the impact of his future actions, an interaction that unveiled the complexity of divine designs and the ambiguous role Hazael would play. On the other hand, the saga of Naboth exemplifies the corruption and moral decay that permeated the leadership of Israel. Ahab, desiring Naboth's vineyard for himself and facing his refusal, revealed his character weakness and susceptibility to the evil influence of Jezebel. She, in turn, plotted a sinister plan that culminated in the unjust execution of Naboth, demonstrating how far corruption could go in the pursuit of power and personal satisfaction. The confrontation between Elijah and Ahab, triggered by the injustice committed against Naboth, highlights Elijah's prophetic courage and the imminence of divine justice. Elijah's prophecies, foretelling the tragic end of Ahab and Jezebel, are a testimony to the power of truth and the inevitability of divine response to iniquity. This narrative, full of twists and profound teachings, not only recounts historical events, but also offers lessons about faith, justice, and God's constant presence in the subtleties of life. The story of Elijah, Elisha, and the characters involved invite the listener to reflect on their own faith, the meaning of justice, and the transformative power of truth. In this saga intertwining challenges, redemption, and the unwavering divine power, the condemnation uttered by Elijah against Ahab carries immense symbolic weight. The curse pronounced was not just a prediction of personal misfortunes, but a tangible manifestation of divine wrath against the corruption and idolatry that had poisoned Ahab's heart under the nefarious influence of Jezebel. Ahab's response, though belated, of donning sackcloth and assuming a posture of mourning and repentance, illustrates a glimmer of hope in the potential for redemption even in the most corrupt. This episode reinforces the idea that under divine vigilance, there is always room for contrition and change, of course. With the end of Ahab's era and the rise of Ahaziah to power, the plot thickens, revealing the persistence of idolatrous practices and disregard for the God of Israel. Elijah's intervention, by divine order, in the face of Ahaziah's messengers, is a striking reminder of God's supreme power and the grave error in seeking guidance from foreign deities. The recurrence with which the divine fire responds to Ahaziah's challenge to Elijah not only confirms God's authority, but also underscores the importance of approaching the sacred with humility and respect. This episode, rich in symbolism and lessons, shows us that true greatness lies in the ability to recognize God's sovereignty and the need to approach him with reverence. The humble approach of the third captain sharply contrasts with the previous attempts to coerce Elijah, illustrating that willingness to submit to God's will can drastically alter the course of events. The plot of Naboth, steeped in injustice and greed, along with the subsequent confrontation between Elijah and Ahab, highlights the inevitability of divine justice. The narrative serves as a powerful reminder that no act of wickedness goes unpunished, and that God's mercy extends even to the hardest of hearts, provided there is genuine repentance. The saga of Elijah and Ahaziah reaffirms a universal truth. Repeated arrogance and disobedience have lasting consequences, but divine authority always prevails. The story illustrates Ahaziah repeating Ahab's mistakes and emphasizes the crucial role of prophets as messengers of God, challenging earthly powers and guiding people back to righteousness. The transition from Elijah to Elisha, marked by Elijah's final journey and the testimony of the miracles that accompanied him, symbolizes the continuity of the prophetic mission and the transfer of divine power. Elisha, in asking for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, not only expresses his desire to follow in his master's footsteps, but also to amplify the impact of his work. This moment, saturated with symbolism and meaning, sets the stage for a new phase of spiritual leadership in Israel. These stories, intertwined with themes of faith, justice, redemption, and divine power, constitute a captivating narrative that resonates through the ages. They invite us to reflect on our own values, on the transformative power of repentance, and the importance of humility in the presence of the sacred. As we immerse ourselves in these stories, we are reminded of God's constant presence and sovereignty, as well as the responsibility each of us has to seek and honor the truth. The transition of Elijah's prophetic leadership to Elisha was not just a milestone in biblical history. It was a moment filled with symbolism and spiritual depth. As Elijah was taken up to heaven, he not only concluded his earthly mission, but also spectacularly passed the baton to Elisha in a whirlwind of fire. This transfer of power was a visual testimony to God's ongoing commitment to his people. Through prophetic guidance and intervention, Elisha, by tearing his clothes and taking up the mantle left by Elijah, symbolized the acceptance of his new mission. Elisha's ability to replicate Elijah's miracle, parting the waters of the Jordan with the mantle he received, was a clear sign that the spirit and power that rested upon Elijah now accompanied Elisha. This act not only reaffirmed Elisha's authority before the sons of the prophets, but also before all Israel, marking the beginning of his ministry with a divine demonstration of approval. The insistence of the sons of the prophets on seeking Elijah, despite Elisha's clear indication of his master's fate, reflects the difficulty in accepting change, even in the face of evidence of divine will. The fruitless search for Elijah served to reiterate Elijah's unique ascent to heaven and the definitive transition of prophetic authority to Elisha. Jezebel, on the other hand, emerged as an executor of divine justice, using Elijah's prophetic word as the foundation for her actions. His zeal in eradicating the house of Ahab was not only a fulfillment of the condemnation pronounced by Elijah, but also an attempt to purify Israel from idolatry and moral corruption. Jezebel's alliance with Jonadab, a man of notable devotion to the Lord, symbolized a renewed commitment to divine values and principles, highlighting the importance of leadership committed to fidelity to God. The trajectory of Elisha, filled with miracles that addressed both the spiritual and material needs of the people, illustrates the multifaceted mission of God's prophets. His acts of mercy, alongside his judgments, emphasize the breadth of divine care, which seeks to restore, heal, and provide, as well as correct and guide. The narratives of Elijah and Elisha, along with the actions of Jezebel, teach us vital lessons about God's sovereignty, the importance of obedience, and the consequences of faithlessness. They also highlight the role of prophets not only as messengers of judgment, but as instruments of grace and redemption. In a world where spiritual challenges persist, the stories of Elijah and Elisha offer inspiration and guidance, reminding us of God's constant presence, the power of faith, and the importance of walking with integrity and purpose according to divine principles. The stories of Elijah and Elisha are indeed beacons of inspiration and guidance amidst life's storms. They teach us about God's closeness in times of desolation and how He empowers His faithful to face adversity with courage and determination. More than mere historical figures, Elijah and Elisha embody eternal principles of faith, perseverance, and divine intervention in human affairs. Through their lives, we are reminded of God's infinite faithfulness, which not only walks with us through dark valleys, but elevates us to fulfill purposes greater than we can imagine. They exemplify the importance of fervent prayer and total dependence on God, showing that it is in confident surrender that we find the strength to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Elijah and Elisha stand out not only for their resilience in the face of adversity, but also for their courage in defending truth and justice in a world that often strays from divine paths. They inspire us to adopt a stance of integrity and to defend our beliefs with conviction, even when it puts us at odds with established norms and powers. Mentorship and discipleship, as demonstrated in the relationship between Elijah and Elisha, reinforce the importance of transmitting knowledge, wisdom, and experience. This intergenerational exchange is crucial for strengthening collective faith and continuing the divine mission through the ages. We are encouraged to be both mentors and disciples on our spiritual journey, learning from each other and sharing the riches of our walk with God. Finally, the lives of Elijah and Elisha invite us to deep reflection on our own walk with God. They encourage us to cultivate an active faith, a prayer life that is constant, and a life that reflects the goodness and sovereignty of God. May their stories inspire us to seek a closer relationship with God, to live in a way that reflects His love and truth, and to leave a legacy of faith that guides others to Him. Thus, may we embrace the timeless teachings found in the lives of Elijah and Elisha, allowing them to shape and prepare us for the challenges and opportunities that arise. Through our own journey of faith, may we also bear witness to God's transformative power, inspiring others to seek His presence and live according to His divine purposes. What other stories of unwavering faith have shaped the course of humanity? Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss our next journey through the narratives that have defined the human spirit.